Willkommen also zu einigen weiteren persönlich uninteressante Geschichten zum 19. Oktober während der PRG. Okay, so here are some more personalized, interesting stories related to October 19th. So let's start off on Lucas Street. This probably would have been mid-morning, sort of. School was dismissed. And I'm there hanging out on Lucas Street, Lower Lucas Street, I would say by, if anyone is familiar, around Wesley Hall area, okay? Close to the Methodist Church where you can actually pass down that alley and end up on Green Street. So I'm hanging around there with a friend of mine. We were dismissed from school. And interestingly enough, I would have gone to school at that time that the PRG would have termed a half petit bourgeois school, okay? So we're standing there and I see a crowd marching up Lucas Street. And in that crowd, who do I see? I see my sister. At that time, she was going to convent. So I'm like, I waved to her. I was like, hey, what's going on? You know, she was just like happy. She had a makeshift placard in her hand. And everybody was jumping and everybody was singing and like, oh, we want a leader. And, you know, so all the placards were related to that sort of stuff. We want a leader, free Maurice Bishop, that sort of stuff. And she's smiling. I could never figure. She was just so happy. And everybody in the crowd was happy. You know what I'm saying? It was like a jubilee kind of, it was like a kind of jubilee atmosphere. You see what I'm saying? So anyway, I waved briefly because the crowd was, you know, marching up Lucas Street. And she proceeded with the crowd up Lucas Street. So then my friend and I, you know, we were trying to decide, should we go to tongue or should we follow the crowd? I was like, no, I'm not going to follow the crowd. So he said he'd probably go over the tongue. And then I said, nah, I'm going back to Green Street. I'm going home because I'm thinking now, I got all my buddies. They're probably off of school right now and we all going to be hanging out. Wow, a day off, you know? So I went home and I must have said this already. I was the kind of youth who knew how to climb the coconut trees. And what is today Green Street Pre-Primary School used to be a property that was owned by an individual family, okay? Mr. Donald is the sort of guy that would get up every morning at 4 o'clock and wake your ass up throughout the neighborhood because he used to play some sort of saxophone or something like that. So every morning at 4, 5 o'clock, you'll hear him playing that saxophone. So that whole property actually belonged to an individual family. I think it was he and his wife that was living there or something like that. But anyway, on the side of his house, they had a bunch of coconut trees. And of course, it was like their land was our land. So I climbed the coconut tree when I got home. And of course, some of my friends were already hanging out on the porch again, the concrete benches. As I told you guys, it was like a meeting spot. And I decided, you know what? Let me go climb the coconut tree. I got some coconuts and I said, look, let me give everybody a coconut. So I'm giving everybody a coconut at a time. Okay? And while that is happening, we feel a sort of rumbling in the ground. And I don't know, it seems kind of weird. I mean, why would we actually feel that rumbling in the ground, you know? But now I understand what was happening. Either the BTRs that were passing on Lucas Street coming down were probably so fast, they were probably moving so fast, or probably was so heavy. For some reason, we literally felt the rumbling in the ground on Green Street. So I was like, you know, it seems incredible, but I could specifically remember feeling that rumbling in the ground. And of course, at the time, I didn't know what it was. But a few minutes after, then we saw what was happening on the fort. Because remember, I'm on Green Street and I have a clear view to what's happening on the fort. And of course, we heard the gunfire and immediately we saw people jumping off the back of the fort. Okay, it was interesting because one person jumped off of the back of the fort and actually got hooked by some branches, tree branches at the back of the fort. So it's like kind of like just dangling up and down for a bit. And I guess eventually they sort of freed themselves from being entangled in the branches. It was a crazy, amazing, kind of horrible sight because all these people were just jumping up. And for some reason at the time, I don't know why that is. Probably I was looking at too much movies in Empire Cinema. But for me, it seemed that it was in slow motion at one point. I was like, what the heck? You know, that's what it felt like and looked like. It just feel like it was in slow motion. I don't know if it was the whole incredulousness of what was happening, but it felt like that at the time. Then a couple minutes again, a whole bunch of people were running across the carnage. Okay? And then coming up Green Street, tons of people just running. Everybody was just trying to get home or to make it home. And for some reason, people were probably going up the eastern side towards like St. Paul, St. David's area. A lot of the times, I'm sure people still do the same thing. If they go into the carnage, they'll just cut down one of the alleys and end up on the carnage. Well, they were doing the reverse. They were running up Green Street and they were cutting up any available alley to get on Lucas Street and try to make it up the eastern side. Okay? So you saw a lot of people, some had some had little wounds on them, like bruises and stuff like that. Some were actually physically bleeding. You know what I'm saying? I guess, jumping off a wall that high, will definitely give you a little something. At the same time, my father comes running up Green Street and says, oh my God, look what's happening over there. It looks like they're trying to kill people or they're killing people. And then he was like, he was a physical guy. And he was a dude that sort of knew the streets. He was the kind of dude that you wouldn't trifle with. He would stand his own. So he probably, when he saw what was happening, he was like, you know what? I'm getting off the foot. I'm definitely getting off. So he survived and he went in, took a shower, and then just chilled. I guess the whole scene, all of that stuff, he was just chilling. You know what I'm saying? And later on, then he would go down on the car and just sort of get some information as to what was really happening or why this happened. People usually says and take digs at people who are overweight. Well, I'm telling you something. You can't tell how fast these people can run. I am telling you. I saw people in the neighborhood on Green Street who might have been considered a little overweight. And boy, oh boy, they were running up Green Street with slippers in hands. Okay? Slippers in hand. And they were gunning it. Literally gunning it going up Green Street. You see what I'm saying? So you can't tell whether these people can run or not run. Never underestimate someone's athletic ability based on their size. So that happened. There was that initial just constant fire, and then there was a kind of calm. And then we heard some more fire. I don't know if that would have been probably that intercession when it started to round up everybody. And that final burst probably would have been the ultimate act. Well, I didn't tell you guys about my sister now. So as for my sister, I don't know if she went all the way up to Mount Weldale or probably just cut down one of the alleys and just went home, because she didn't tell me anything exciting about all the stuff I heard subsequently that happened at the gates of Mount Weldale. She didn't say anything about that. So, but women and girls were kind of different, They were more reserved and just like, it was a whole different lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? I felt like at the time, to me, it seems like my sisters, they did a lot of the stuff around the house. I, luckily barely did anything. I mean, I did have to throw the garbage and that was that, But again, as I said, I was having too much time just running all over the place. So they couldn't find me to get me to do anything. So that's just how it worked, But I believe she probably might have just cut off one of the alleys and just went home. And we never spoke about anything related to that, about what she did subsequently. So it's definitely probably, so it's definitely probably I got to go with my hunch. And we never spoke about it since, which gives me an idea now. I should probably ask her, wait, what did you really do after I saw you? So basically for the next day or two, we just kind of laid low. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we had a choice, right? But interesting enough, at that time, one of my sisters was actually in a relationship with someone who actually worked on the Coast Guard. He was actually one of those dudes that was part of the whole Coast Guard crew. All right, so we're home one day, I say probably mid-afternoon. And I think a friend, one family friend, she was so worried, so afraid of what was going on, that I think she kind of like stayed over at our place, because she just didn't want to be at her place. She just didn't want to be at her place. So she was over at our place. So there it is now. I guess my sister's fiance now would have pulled up to try to come and drop some food off because, things were kind of precarious. So he was going to drop some food off for us. So he pulled up in one of those Jeeps, I guess, with a couple of his buddies. And came, bang on the door. So apparently that friend of ours, she was always paranoid at the time. She was always looking through the window, looking through the louvers, stuff like that. So she must have looked through the louvers and saw this guy dressed all in military garb with a couple other guys. So she just dashed and ran to us in the living room and said, oh, the PR is here, the PR is here. And then she left us in the living room and ran into the bedroom and ran under the bed. Apparently she thought they were probably coming for somebody in the house. So then my sister and I went towards the back by the porch area and we realized that it was my sister's fiance. He said, oh, hey, what's going on? So he came in, he dropped some food off, dropped some canned stuff, other non-perishables, and, just to make sure that we were taken care of, just in case things went really, really south. And then he left. So we went back now to a friend who was hidden under the bed. And we said, no, don't worry about it. It's just a family friend, no need to worry. And I can understand how she felt because, there was a bit of paranoia all over the place. I mean, people were just uncertain, not knowing what was going to happen, seeing what just happened, So you could understand. People are terrified. And a matter of fact, that particular lady lived, I suspect, in retrospect, she lived close to a particular lady who was actually a supporter of Maurice Bishop on Bain Alley. So she lived close to this lady. So I figured she didn't want to be in the vicinity of that particular lady because the word got out that they were looking for her after the whole thing happened on the fort. She happened to not be on the fort. Okay? She happened to be in the market square. So luckily, she wasn't on the fort. Okay? Because knowing the connection, if she was on the fort, God alone knows what her fate would have been. And interestingly enough, that particular lady on Bain Alley was again another family friend. Okay? Close family friend. And subsequently the night, it might have been the same night, I think, or the night after, if I remember, that they actually came for her. Okay? They came, surrounded her house, and arrested her. She now subsequently had to spend some time up, I think it was at Richmond Hill or something like that. I think that's where they took her. And if anybody knows about what was going on back in those times, there were some horrible things that could have happened at Richmond Hill. So she ended up staying there until after the invasion. So she must have been praying like 10 pundits. Please, somebody come help me. So that's that. We're just waiting now, not knowing what's going to happen. We're just there, and there's like an atmosphere of just tension in the air. I think in between that time, between October 19th and 25th, there might have been a day or two when people were given permission to actually go to the shops, if I remember well. I think that might have happened. So there used to be a famous Benjamin shop. Oh yeah, and talking about grocery shopping and food shopping, that was one of my chores. So I would usually accompany whoever is going food shopping, probably to food fair on the Carnage or food fair in Grenada, and I'll help out with that, for the house. And if anything, miscellaneous was needed in the shops in the area, I will actually go to the shops and get that stuff. So at least I had a little bit of chore. And I was more than happy to volunteer for the shop run, you know what I'm saying? Because, if you're going to shop run, you're going to get something for yourself. And we had some pretty good, decent shops in the area. We had Miss Lagate on well, they call it Blaze, what? No, they call it, Blaze Street now. Yeah, we used to call it Taylor Street. Then we had Prophet on the Carnage. We had, what was their name again? Oh my goodness. We had Marshall Shop at the bottom of Park Lane. What else did we have? Okay, so now I remember. Actually, I had to call a Green Street man to remind me. It was Fraser's Shop, okay? And that was right behind Empire Cinema on Turtle Street, right across the street. Yeah, that's what it was. It was actually Fraser's Shop. But Benjamin was like a, one-stop shop. There's a lot of stuff, at Benjamin's shop. It was actually located where the police give signal on the Scott Street area. Well, they probably have a traffic light, actually. So yeah, but there used to be a police giving signal, by the Scott Street, that intersection right there. And going up that hill on the left-hand side was where Benjamin's shop was. So I remember specifically lining up that day to go get, some miscellaneous stuff for the house, when everybody was given a little break to get some stuff from the shops. A little break from the curfew. So that's about it for this story. Coming up soon, there'll be more stories related to the invasion. In diesem Sinne, wünsche ich dir eine schöne Nacht.